Extra, extra Broadway fans, we're about to discuss Newsies, and you can't find our opinions in the papes, so you better watch.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Broadway Breakdown.
If we're united, let us seize the day.
Hey Broadway people! We are talking Newsies today, if you could not tell by this amazing score by Alan Menken. I am Phipps14, Briana Phipps, that's your host on Twitter, Instagram, Phipps1214 on Snapchat. And my lovely, lovely host, we have special guest.
Hi everyone, I'm Tiona Hobson. Thanks for having me back, guys. You can find me at the Tiona Hobson.
And as always,
I'm Jacque Kelly. No, I'm close. I'm 123 Jackie B on all platforms.
And she's our little cowboy today.
Yeah, I've got my Jacque Kelly.
And of course, then we have our amazing, amazing engineer Alexis back in the booth with us today. Hi Alexis, you want to tell them where they can find you?
You can find me all over social media at atorres890. I'm ready to seize the day.
Yes, Alexis.
All right, guys, before we seize the day, though, we will be talking about, of course, our Broadway news for the week, always brought to us by Robert Diamond and BroadwayWorld.com. Thank you so much for giving this to us every week. This first one I had seen earlier in the week, and I was like, okay, we're going to have to talk about this, which is the fact that Allegiance, George Takei's new musical, is going to be filmed.
I think it's Takei, because he had that whole thing with like Takei so gay, and it was like rhyming. And I'm not making this up. It's like not me trying to be mean.
No, it's okay. Like I've only known him from Star Wars and from people making fun of him for Star Wars and from Will and Grace. So,
and I only know that because my boyfriend keeps being like, you're pronouncing his name wrong and you're supposed to be a fan of his. And I'm like, okay, Takei.
Learning something new.
Yeah.
Shooting star, the more you know.
Shooting star, the more you know.
But yeah,
I'm excited for that.
I'm just excited just because the more and more we hear, because we keep talking about it every week, that they keep filming more and more musicals to put into theaters, which I think is amazing. And I'm also just intrigued because I didn't know if I would want to pay money to go see if he could sing, but I would love to watch to see if he could sing. Or
there
if
are
he
plenty
even
of
sings.
other people in the cast.
No, yeah.
I don't know if he sings or not, but
Exactly.
like there are plenty of other people in the cast who can sing.
Yeah, are great singers and great dancers.
Yeah.
But him in particular, I'm just intrigued.
I think, and I could be wrong, I feel like he's done some online video clips of, making fun of himself where he does sing and he can at least hold
you're
a
right,
tune.
Tiona.
Oh.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, there's a few. He's very, very active on that kind of stuff. So
Good.
He really
now
has
I
like
can go see that.
he has like the best Facebook page, the best Twitter,
Yeah,
like
awesome YouTube
so
channel, I
much
think.
funny stuff.
yeah.
He's hilarious.
He's
Yeah.
also amazing on Will and Grace, not just because it's my favorite comedy of all time. But yeah, this play is about the internment of the Japanese during World War II. It's based off of personal experiences from his own life, so that's going to be really...
It's going to be interesting how that subject matter becomes a musical.
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't know about other parts of the world and stuff. Like, I grew up in San Francisco where there was a large internment of the Asian population, especially Japanese, because of World War II. So we don't learn too much about that, though, in history class. At least I didn't.
There was one page in my history book about this, and I
Yeah.
remember that as a kid because I remember thinking like, oh, well, I guess that wasn't so bad, and then growing up and actually learning about it, being like,
terrible.
oh, wait, no, like this was a horrible, horrible thing that happened, but in the history book, it only had like 2 paragraphs on it, 1 page and a picture.
They have in Los Angeles, they have a Japanese American museum that has a lot of information about the Japanese internment camps. If you live in LA and you're interested, I'm sure there are other museums across the U.S. The way I found this out, though, is I went there for a Hello Kitty exhibit, and the Hello Kitty exhibit dumps you out at the internment camp. So you're like happy, and they're like, life is terrible.
Yeah,
my
it's
gosh.
kind of an intense...
It was very intense, but it was very much, you realize that these people, like, we were treating them just as horribly as the German people were treating the Jewish people. So it's really, it should be a piece of history that we really should
And it'll
learn
be
about.
interesting to see it from the perspective of someone that went through it rather than just basing it off of a history book.
Yeah.
This is going to be December 13th is when they're going to film it. And you can start purchasing tickets for that date on November 11th at www.fathomevents.com or at box offices. Second piece of news is Angela Lansbury reveals that she actually won't be returning to the Chalk Garden. She said, I've decided against coming back to Broadway. She wants to spend more time with her family, which I feel she deserves. the woman is 90.
Yeah, that was more of my thing. I was like, she's 90. Like, if I was 90, I would not want to be up and doing a play. I'd be like, bitches, I am legendary, and now I need a
But
nap.
I like that her reason isn't because, like, well, I'm just, I'm older and I really, like, I don't feel like I can do this anymore.
She did say, though, that she doesn't feel like she feels like 5 years ago, like 10 years ago, which
but her main reason was just because I don't want to be alone in New York. I'd rather be with my family. Yeah. Which is, like, amazing. Like, because this woman, I just feel like she's, like, a big tank truck. Like, nothing can destroy her.
She did she sang her song from Beauty and the Beast, Tale as Old as Time.
Yeah. I saw the clip of that.
Yeah, there's a clip on Broadway Be Down on our Twitter feed if you want to check it out.
I wish she was singing it in the new movie, in the new live action.
I do too.
I don't know if I can listen to someone else sing it. I mean, I did in the musical, but still. In my head, it was Angela Lansbury.
The musical's a lot different, though. Like, I feel like things are okay in the musical because the musical kind of has some really different things going on there.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, if you guys were planning on going to the Chalk Garden to see her, you won't see Angela Lansbury. It might still be a great show, though, so who knows? Last piece of news we have for today is Ramin Karimloo, and I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, is going to return to Broadway as Glub in Anastasia, the new Anastasia movie they're coming out with, which did super well in its previews.
I want to see this so bad.
I love
the cartoon
movie.
Yeah.
The animation is one of my favorite movies. It's not Disney.
It's not Disney.
For everyone that thinks it's Disney, it's not Disney.
No. It looks very Disney-esque,
well,
but
it's because the guy,
the
guy coming back from Xanadu, that did the animation for Xanadu that looked very Disney. He used to work for Disney, and then he broke out and did all these things, and that's why people always think it's Disney, because it looks.
I used to think that I was Anastasia, the Lost Princess.
Yep, same here.
I don't know how, like, age-wise that would have worked out, but in my mind, I was like, that's it. I'm trapped here because I don't remember that I'm a princess. And, yeah.
You traveled through time.
I traveled through time, apparently.
There was some old movie where they showed, like, what happened in the Russian Revolution, and they showed how, like, most of the family was, like, captured and shot at gunpoint, and I was like, I don't want to be Anastasia. Her whole family died horribly.
Did you guys have to watch the video? In my biology class, we had to watch where they, like, did the ear test, like, the woman that claimed to be her, and it turned out she wasn't. They found out she wasn't. Yeah. But, like, they were like, oh, look at this ear. And Anastasia's ear, we can tell by determination of this, like that.
I didn't hear about that.
We watched it in my biology class, and I was like, how can you tell?
Like, did they use a picture of the ear, like a side by side comparison?
Yeah, like like they took an old, I don't know, like it was weird.
I was in biology for like very remedial students, so I didn't watch anything.
I'm convinced she's still alive and she's still out there.
Just hanging out.
Yeah, she's still
like,
she's
how
just
old would
like,
she be now? Like 100?
And then she's gonna come back and sing to us.
She's gonna come back and sing.
Hey, as long as she sings Once Upon a
Angela
December.
Lansbury was also in that film singing in a terrible Russian accent.
Oh.
Sorry, I love the film, but it was sorry. I love Angela Lansbury, but it was a really weird Russian accent.
It's okay, Tiona. You're the actual Princess Tiona.
Almost.
Yes, I got Princess Tiona.
Yeah,
instead.
you are Princess Tiona.
Anyway, so this will be opening on April 24th, 2017 at the Broadhurst Theaters when Anastasia will open officially.
Nice. I have my own little Broadway news. There's going to be a Hamilton documentary on PBS next month on October 21st.
Yeah.
If you want more information, I tweeted it at our Broadway Be Down.
It's on my dad's birthday. We're so excited.
That's awesome.
He said it's the best birthday present he's ever going to get.
Yeah, that's a celebration right there.
Back to our show now. Thank you so much again, Robert Diamond, on BroadwayWorld.com. We're talking Newsies, the film. This
is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh my god, mine too.
I'm so freaking excited.
So excited about this right now.
I'm going to read this really fast.
Tiana and I are going to like zoom from our seats.
I'm going to read this really fast, and it's just the actual account like that I got from Wikipedia, so I'm sorry if it's wrong. But it's from Wikipedia, so it has to be right? So the actual Newsboys Strike of 1899 lasted from July 20th to August 2nd. The leader of the strike was a one-eyed young man named Louis Ballant, nicknamed Kid Blink, who spoke with a heavy Brooklyn accent and was often phonetically transcribed when he was quoted by newspapers. And that's why they have the kid with the eye patch is to
He's called
the
Kid
actual
Blink.
leader.
He is called Kid Blink in the movie.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. And Maurice Cohen was the inspiration for Jack Cowboy Kelly. While the role of the strike leader is given to the fictional Kelly, the actual strike ended with a compromise. The world and Journal agreed to buy back all unsold copies of the newspapers. The history of the Newsboys Strike of 1899 is told in David Nassa's book, Children of the City at Work and Play. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, I wanted just to read that so everyone knew the actual count.
That there is a history to it.
There is a history.
I mean, Jacque, it's interesting because when you look at the characters, the fictional characters of Jacque and David and Spot Conlon, they're actually kind of an amalgamation of Kid Blank, because some of the things they do were things that actually happened to him. Some of the things that happened to them are things that actually did happen to the Newsies. Like they were shorted on some of their papers, which is like part of what started it in the first place, because they felt like they were getting ripped off. And the Newsies were, actually like, they were a huge distribution. It was like a big job for kids because kids were so poor and they needed jobs. But I don't think many of them were as old as they're portrayed in this film.
Well, I mean, a lot of them are younger than Jacque Kelly is, because he's 17.
Right. But when you look at the other characters, like David Moscow is clearly the same age as Christian Bale. I don't know actually factually if he was, but he looks like he's about the same age. There are a lot of...
Christian Bale, by the way, fun fact, actually 17 in this movie. Very rare to have someone play their own age.
Which, I'm sorry, he doesn't look an age of 17. He looks like he's like 25.
Right.
Yeah, our friend was
that?
all like watching it because he had no idea this existed. And he was like, how come he looks the same as he does now, just in a maybe little smaller body?
Yeah, his head looks exactly the same.
Exactly.
He hated this movie.
Yeah, which
Fun
I
fact.
do want to talk about. I'm going to talk about later because it's just interesting to me. But why do you guys think that they decided to like make this Jacque Kelly character instead of going with the original character, since it is based loosely?
Well, first off, you'd have to have a kid like dancing with an eye patch on, and I don't actually watch the character that much who plays Kid Blank.
Oh, he dances his ass off with
Yeah.
that eye patch.
Yeah, there's a character in the musical also who has an eye patch and he dances the entire time.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. I'm intrigued as to.
I just thought that it helps the story because it's based on actual facts, but it's not completely exactly what happened. So by having a fictional character in there, it helps for it to not be like, this is history, this is how it went down.
That's a good point.
It's kind of like, okay, but this is a fictional character, so it allows you to have more lenience with the story
so it's
and to
not
make
like
it more
watching Disney's
production.
Pocahontas, where you're like, wow, what did you do to Pocahontas?
Also, Christian Bale was in that film as well.
Christian Bale Sunday, guys.
That's kind of Sunday.
So we do have the main characters. You said Jacque Kelly, Davy, Les, which is the little Les. Sorry, which
He's
is the
hot
little
now,
brother.
by the way. Look him up.
He is.
Yeah, I saw the
Yes.
IMDb. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hey there, Luke. Hey.
Tiana coming for
we're
you.
like the same age, so because
Yeah, no, like seriously,
So it's
Tiana
okay.
coming for you, buddy.
it's okay.
And then I've added Crutchy into the main characters because in my head he's one of the main
Crutchy
characters.
is
one
my
of the main
favorite
characters.
character.
Yeah, like even though like he like does spend.
The majority of time at the refuge.
Yeah.
That kid is acting really hard, though. He
Yeah.
doesn't actually talk like that. He doesn't actually have a limp, so it's like he has to do
I
a lot
love
of
that
acting.
that like line where it's all like, do you think people can tell I'm faking my limp? Because I'm like, what if like he was just asking that in general? And they're like, you know what? Let's put that in the
Let's put
film.
that in there. Great line.
Great. And then Spot, who I didn't realize, but like I've seen like a lot of he's a big actor nowadays. Like he was in Boardwalk Empire, which I watched. He was just in that Vinyl. He has it in with Martin Scorsese.
Really?
Yeah.
Guys, can
He
I
just
tell you
doesn't look the
something?
same anymore.
I was going to marry him when I was a kid.
Spot?
Like, he was my future husband. He's part of the reason I watched this movie almost every single day after school, to the point of my mom being like, let's hide this VHS from Tiana so she cannot put it on anymore. But it was all for Spot.
I think, you know what?
Something about a Brooklyn boy, you know?
Hashtag all for Spot.
There's also something about this movie that I think Tiana and I watched it as teenage girls. So when you're a teenage girl and there's a movie full of like very attractive teenage boys, it's hard not to like look on it with like nostalgia and
You watched
awe.
it as a teenage girl in 1992? You're not that old, Jackie.
No, like,
I was a teenage girl in 1992. I lived in Germany. I didn't watch this movie because
okay.
I didn't watch this movie until I moved to the States, and I was a teenager.
Okay. I thought you were saying in 1992.
I was
No.
like a 7-year-old having awkward feelings about these boys, and I blame it on Kenny Ortega because there's a lot of pelvic thrusting.
There are
pelvic thrust, and as in 92, I was 6 years old.
His go-to is
It
like,
really
what do we have to put in?
insane.
What do we? I need some choreography for this one part. You know what? Hand thrust, pelvic thrust. We're good. Let's move on.
There's just so much pelvic thrusting, and as I was rewatching it too, I was like, oh, why are my eyes down there, not like up at what's happening? But I was like, oh, because every other move they're thrusting their pelvis in some way.
I noticed this time too. There are a lot of like shirtless, inexplicably shirtless extras.
Yeah.
Like they're handing out the papers in that one scene, and there's like arc welders who are like, "I'm just in my pants, man. Hand me that." And I was like, "Woo!" And then there's a guy jumping off of the bridge in Brooklyn.
It's hot.
Yeah,
It's sweaty. They don't have time for shirts.
They wear white underwear swimming.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. Hey guys.
if you are a
6-year-old
teenage
Tiona.
girl, this is for you. I was all about Jacque Kelly and Denton. I mean,
I would have been for Jacque
Denton.
Kelly if it weren't.
Yeah, Denton. Okay.
I just didn't like his hat.
I just thought that
his
Jack.
cowboy
I
hat.
thought
didn't like
Jack
his
and
cowboy
Sarah
hat.
were meant to be.
I like the New York style hat.
he
was
dared
like-
to be different.
Are we seriously going to have a civil war about hats right now? Stop
How
it.
it's going down, Alexis.
No.
Okay.
Jack Kelly and
There's
Sarah
been
were.
many
Brianna
a
hates
fight.
my hat.
That's not the. It's different. It's a different hat,
It is a different
and it looks
cowboy
adorable
hat.
on you.
Thank you.
She's just saying that.
I know. She's
Okay.
gonna beat me up after this.
So sorry. Alan Menken wrote the music for this iconic Disney, especially for early '90s.
So good. And they had him write it because he wrote Little Mermaid, and Little Mermaid was so successful. They actually, I don't think they were thinking of making this a musical, which is why Christian Bale signed on.
I feel like
And
Christian
then all
Bale.
of a
I mean, this
sudden-
was his like he had done stuff before this, but like not a whole ton, and not anything that's recognizable. So like I feel like Disney signs you up for a movie and puts you in the lead, regardless if it's a musical or not. I'm doing it.
I'm sure I think it was probably more of a thing where his agents were like, listen, man, this is Disney. They were probably in the mindset of like, this is going to be a huge blockbuster. Alan Menken, who just came off like Little Mermaid,
Kenny
which was
Ortega.
a huge hit. Kenny
Well,
Ortega.
this was his first time
No.
directing.
Oh, directing, yeah,
Yeah.
but not choreo. But
Yeah,
still.
not choreographing.
But so like they were probably like pushing him like, do this, man, and then he got into it. And I was watching some interviews with the cast and whatnot, and they were the choreographer, the like stunt choreographer. She was like, yeah, Christian Bale doesn't like to like rehearse these scenes or anything. He just wants to show up and be there.
So that's why when you.
Okay, well
that's
yeah, okay.
what
Say
I
it
was
again.
gonna
Say it
tell you.
again.
Okay.
I just like the feel of the songs, like, because I feel like they each, while they kind of mesh together well, which is why the reprises, which Steven hated, by the way. I made him listen to the sound. It's like part of like the most fun part of this show for me is making him watch these musicals with me and listen to the soundtracks. But he was just like, I've heard this song 4 times. They only wrote 4 songs. I was like, stop. Stop right now. It's just because they sound alike, because he does such a good job of meshing the soundtracks together.
Yes.
But like they each have like this like strong feeling behind them too, like carrying the banner, not like even that I feel like is like it's just so powerful. Like Alan Menken has a way of taking songs, and even though they're still fun and like catchy, like if you listen to the words, you're like, oh, like this actually is really powerful.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When I put in the DVD to like rewatch it, and the DVD, the music plays up, and I'm like getting all teary eyed. I'm like, oh, I just love this. I can't wait.
And then it's stuck in your head for 8 days. But
For forever. Ever since we started talking about this, I've had Newsies stuck in my head, and then I listened to the soundtrack on my drive to a wedding this weekend, and on my drive home, and I watched the movie. So now everything's really in there. But it was interesting to actually, because I've been watching this since its release, basically. Like I didn't see it in theaters, but we had the first VHS copy and we wore that sucker out. So it's like since 93, I'll say, whatever, but it's like I never really stopped to listen to what they were singing about. It's like as a kid I was like, oh, this is just like fun movie, and then
But that's
like
the great thing. That's why it
it's
translates
like actually
throughout the
teaching you
years.
something, and throughout the years I'm like, oh wow, like these kids had it tough, and they're telling me about it in this song that's so fun, and like
There are some
me wanna
lyrics
dance.
though, and I mean, I guess we'll talk about this next week when we talk about the play, that were changed, and I love them because I only know all the original lyrics. I've only seen the Broadway play once. I don't listen to the Broadway music because I love the original so much. But I mean, you have lyrics like Pulitzer may crack the whip, but he won't whip us, which is not brought over to the play because it sounds like Pulitzer's running some like pain dungeon. And then, I mean, you have other lyrics like A Saturday Night with the Mayor's Daughter, which from the King of New York does not move over to the new one. So
Probably for reasons.
Why?
and
I don't know, guys.
it's like but they're boys, so I kind of like I get it. It's not like
Yeah.
to me I don't find it malicious, but I guess when they moved it to be a Broadway musical, they were like, we should probably change some of these things to be a little more PC.
They're probably thinking, man, the shit we got away with in the 90s, man. Like, we just say whatever we wanted. No one caused a protest. But
Right?
nowadays it'd be like, you guys hate women and you're
just like
degrading.
we had to
and
change the cover of the frickin' Little Mermaid cover
Yeah.
because it looked like a penis.
One person finds a penis up there and ruins it for everyone.
If you want to find a penis, you can find a penis in anything.
Right? The Washington Monument is a penis. Come on. There are plenty other penises in this musical. Just saying. A lot of pelvic thrust.
Also, in regards to the music, like the dancing plays a huge factor, and I'm going to talk more about the dancing because I think the play is more about the dancing than the movie. But you know, we do have Kenny Ortega, who is one of the biggest choreographers. What do you guys think, like, having a choreographer direct, do you think that, like, kind of, like, hinders or helps a movie overall? Like, not even in this maybe one circumstance.
I honestly think that if it's a movie that's not strongly focused on the acting, like this one is, I think it helps because as the choreographer and the director, you're seeing things in the camera moves while you're doing the choreography that you can then make sure can happen, because I think a lot of times what I've seen some choreographers do is choreograph this great number and then it gets to like the actual stage and stuff and you're like, wait, okay, now I have to change things because the camera needs to come here, and as the director you're already thinking of all these things. So maybe it helps a little bit.
I think people are people. I really do, Cliff. No, I think people are people, and I think like when you look at the other stuff that Kenny Ortega has directed, like you look at Hocus Pocus, there's no dancing in Hocus Pocus, and I don't know about you guys, but I love that movie.
Yes.
I think it's a great.
I'm not
movie.
talking about having a choreographer become a director. I'm talking about having him do both in one film. Is he being too stretched?
I don't think so. He did High School Musical. He did This Is It. I mean, he's like if your movie is going to have a lot of dancing, it's probably better to have a choreographer director to kind of know how the dance is going to meld with the imagery, so that it doesn't end up just looking like the dancing in this is so beautiful because it actually, like, the camera moves with the dancing. You're not going to see just like a static shot like you do in West Side Story where people are just like a one shot dancing on a roof. That doesn't happen here, which is why to me like the dancing in this movie is so compelling, because you have all these different things happening, but it's not just like you're filming a stage show.
It's very true. And I mean, they spent like 10 weeks, I think it was, like doing martial arts training and dance rehearsals before they even started filming. So I mean, to help the kids really get to know each other and to make sure that was portrayed on camera. And then he really got to spend time with these guys, getting everything down and knowing what his shots were going to be to make sure that, like you said, the camera was moving with them.
And I do have, you know, some of these people, some of these actors weren't dancers, obviously, to begin with, and they had to learn. So I do have two clips, and it's of Christian Bale. And one of them is a funny clip, but the first one I do want to give him credit for, because this is the Santa Fe clip of him dancing. If we can pull that up, Alexis. Just to give kind of a taste, like, of, while you can tell if you've done dance that he's not a dancer, like, I think he still does a really great job. In my head, I like to
He
think-
actually does, like, coming from a dance perspective, looking at someone knowing that they quote unquote don't dance.
does a really good job. I like to think in my head that
Like just this
they
stuff where he does.
reshot this a bunch of times just to add more dirt on the floor for the kicks.
Yeah, and even that thing where he goes down to the floor and kind of rolls onto his knees. That's hard.
It's hard. And like you know, there are certain circumstances where you can tell like the split jump, like if he was a trained dancer, would be way higher. But
Right.
like he does a great job with it. And that leads me to my second clip, which is Tiona. when you talked about him not wanting to do more takes, Tiona said that this was what she was thinking. Because this, just like as an introductory to his dancing, was the weird part for me. And he's on the right here. Sorry, it's terrible. It's all I could find. But punch, thrust, and then watch him. Like,
Absolutely terrible.
I watched him do that.
That's something I've noticed, and I always thought looking at this, as much as Christian Bale might hate it, he's brilliant. Like,
he's really
watching him in this role, first off, you have to remember he's Welsh, and he's putting on a New York accent. Mm-hmm. It's not just like a blanket American accent. He has to put on an accent. It's a New York accent. And then he is like the emotional anchor of this movie, and he does it so well. And it's like, it's so sad to me that like he's probably a teenager hating musicals, whatever, didn't like the fact that it didn't do well, but it's like so many young girls like me looked at him and I was like, you're so cool, and I think that actually was a combination of like, I didn't rehearse enough, yes, but also like a character choice. It's like you have all these guys, like David is a more polished kind of guy, like you have these characters that are kind of dancing all around you, but I think having the male lead be flawed and his character is flawed, having him dance flawed just kind of adds to that.
I'm on that with you. I'm gonna call a little bit of bull. I'm gonna say maybe that was a justification he used to not have to do it again, because he got messed up.
Or that's just the take that they used. Yeah, other takes were better for him, but worse for everyone else.
I think they would have made him do it again if they didn't love that take. And the reason I love that take is because it's like, it's so Jack Kelly. He's like Devil May Care. He's like, yeah, whatever, you know?
I love it just to laugh at it because it just reminds me of like a drunk stumbling. But
yeah, it does look like that. But I mean, just to go off of what you were saying earlier about what the, I guess, assistant choreographer or whatever was saying, was that he didn't like to rehearse because as an actor, he likes to be more spontaneous. So they rehearsed this like 4 months ago, and then they're dancing now on set. And so they made a deal of like 1 to 2 days before they were going to film a big dance number. They would rehearse it a couple more times. And she said it was actually great because he would remember every step from 4 months ago, even though everyone else was still rehearsing the numbers, but he wouldn't be rehearsing with them. And so for him to pick it up again in like 1 to 2 days was, to her, kind of...
Well, we know why. It's because...
I'm Batman.
Like I said, I'm not faulting Christian Bale at all. He wasn't a dancer, and I'm giving him due credit in a majority of it, but that one I am going to call.
Yeah, that one, of course you should. But he also said that, he never sang before outside of like in the shower and stuff.
He does a decent job with that too.
Yeah, and he does a decent job with that, and I think that's one of the things of, he was embarrassed that he was doing a musical, because I think especially back in this day, I think that to be taken seriously as an actor, you didn't want to be doing, like a frivolous musical. At least in his mind, that's what he thought. So I could see how he was like, a musical now, like I'm not even a singer, or a dancer, why am I doing this?
It is an interesting choice to make on Disney's part, like to hire someone that is not even super known, that isn't a dancer or a singer, to lead in it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it paid off for them. I mean,
later.
Way later.
Later.
But I do think that when you watch him in this role, like, I don't know who was up against him, but I couldn't imagine anyone else playing this part. Yeah. He like. The stuff that he has to do, like that cowboy dancing scene, I think it comes off really, really well. And if it was somebody else, you would be like, this cheesy motherfucker, But he makes it look cool. He makes everything he does look cool, even if it's technically not cool.
I'm Batman.
That's why.
That's why.
You know how many times Steven said that during this film, just because it even takes place in New York? Oh my gosh. Segueing into... This film, unfortunately, did not do well in the box office. It flopped. It got really negative reviews from critics, not from fans, from critics.
Yeah.
And it did get nominated for 5 Golden Raspberries and won 1. It got nominated for Worst Picture, Worst Director for Kenny Ortega, Worst Supporting Actor for Robert Duvall, which I kind of agree with on that one. Robert Duvall in this movie reminds me of the bankers from Mary Poppins.
Yeah, he does.
Oh, yeah.
He does. Which is terrifying.
Yeah, it took me years to figure out that was Robert Duvall.
It did for me. Like, I didn't know until I was reading, oh, that's Robert Duvall.
Yeah, I was like, wait a second.
We're supporting actors for Ann-Margret, which I think is unfair because she didn't really have much of a part in this film.
Yeah, I didn't understand that nomination.
Razzies, I don't know, for me, like, haven't movies been nominated for Razzies that were also nominated for Academy Awards? I know it's happened before. It's like... Yeah. You also have to remember that this movie was made for kids.
Well, we're not getting... I'm just stating the facts here. I'm not, like, bragging on it. And it also got nominated for Worst Original Song. If you want to play that little audio clip, Alexis, this is High Times, Hard Times.
The song is terrible.
Did get nominated and won.
Is this in the musical?
It's not.
No,
No,
it's
okay.
not.
They
I wanted to
switched it into a much better song, in my
song.
opinion.
And it's sung by like a black lady.
Well, she's still
Oh
meta.
yeah, I've met her.
Just
She's
like it's all
awesome.
soulful with it.
This part is the weirdest part to me here, the little accent.
Put on my best and I
Stick out my chest.
and I'm off to the races again.
It's also just a weird song to have during that moment in the play for me, because like they're all gathering together to like figure this out, and like it just is a little too comedic. Because the one they use, and we'll get into it next week in the Broadway, is comedic still, but I think it's still a little more.
I think they wanted something for the rally, and the lyrics make sense in that, like, you know, a lot of these kids do experience hard times, and she's like the point of the song is to like go out there and do your best no matter what. But I do think that like it would have been better to have a song maybe that the Newsies sing with her, not just her performing
but I
for
think
them.
the other part of that is that the Newsies loved going to these vaudeville shows, and when they were researching the film, they found that they spent a lot of time there. So I think this was also a moment for the Newsies to enjoy, to see us, for the audience to see that the Newsies loved seeing these sort of acts happen, and to kind of have it just as her moment. Plus, it's Ann-Margret. You have to give her her own song.
Right?
When she
She does.
agrees
This
to
is
do.
her second song.
Yeah, well, the first
She
one's
sings-
like kind of cut off, you know?
Baby.
Yeah.
That song is terrible too.
Yeah, they didn't.
So it's like you
I
had to
love
give her her
Ann-Margret,
big.
but these are
Yeah, you had to
terrible
give her
songs.
like
Yeah, they
a
didn't-
big moment in the.
But
in the movie.
yeah, it just didn't pay off
Yeah.
in the end for it. It just didn't, for me, didn't come across what I mean. I didn't grow up with the film like you guys. I didn't watch it until I was in high school for the first time. I still really like that film. It's surprising to me that I didn't see it growing up, because like I've seen, my parents bought every single Disney movie existing. So
There was also this awesome like PSA ad that would play like on the VHS tape before the movie came on, and it was like this PSA about like don't do drugs or something, because it's the 90s, so of course they always had those. But it's got a bunch of the kids from Newsies are in it, but they're like themselves. So that, for me, that was part of the movie
they did
watching
that all
experience.
the time in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, like part of the movie watching experience on the VHS version was for me to watch the PSA, not do drugs, and then get into like see Spot Collins over there like, hey you, and then
I thought you were going to say that they were going to tell them not to smoke since they smoke so much in the show.
it was like anti-drugs
Max
or
Costello,
something
though,
like
who
that.
played Racetrack, the only
Yes.
the only guy who actually has a New York accent. He's a big actor now. He's on, I forget what TV show he's on now.
I forget too, but he like did a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
He was
he's
probably
done a
like
lot
the
of
most
stuff, but
well-known.
Apparently, he was like very into like doing research and whatnot for his role, which
Yes.
I appreciate it. I think it came out.
And on the DVD, he does the behind the scenes special.
Yeah,
It's like
he
a 20-minute
does.
special
He
of
does
him
do
like
the
taking
behind
you
the
through
scenes.
For all the negative things that came out about this movie when it first showed, like, it has become a cult classic. People love
Definitely.
this film. Like, generations, like people that grew up with it, people nowadays watching it, the musicals bringing it back. They do a show at Disneyland with the trolley cars. Like, it's a huge thing. So it's always interesting to me to see these films that do get such negative press and like do not do well at the box office, but have like outlived films that did super well at the box office.
Because sometimes the films that do super well at the box office, it's a great film, but it's not something I want
Wanna
to
watch a bunch of
rewatch
times.
over and over again. It's always the ones like this that, you know, it's like when I'm having a rough day, it's like, oh, let me go sing.
I
to
think part of
Newsies.
this though has to do with press, and this goes into the point that I was trying to make earlier, whereas like when you think of critics and you think of people who take kids to movies, adults really take kids to movies based on like their adult notion of what they think kids will like, or their adult notion of what they want to watch with their kids. It's not always kids being like, hey, I want to see this movie, and your parents are like, yes. I think if there were more advertising to kids, maybe that would have helped. And again, I lived in Germany at the time, so I don't know what kind of
No.
advertising they were doing.
And I was 4 years old, so.
Yeah. But also, I think that when you have a critic who's looking at a movie like this movie is definitely geared towards kids. So it's weird to me to have the critics not kind of like recognize that and then like tear it apart like it was trying to be some sort of like accurate historical representation.
It also seems to me, because I like personally, if I see that a critic hated a film, I'm like, I'm going to go see that film, because I usually always disagree with them. So I'm like, that's a film I need to go see because I'm going to like it because they hate it.
like
I'm
the
the
film
same way.
Excess Baggage. go see it. Alicia Silverstone and Benicio del Toro, and she kidnaps herself. It's wonderful. Christopher
I saw that.
Walken.
I remember
Shameless
seeing
plug.
that in theaters.
Shameless plug for how amazing I love that, how much I love that movie and how much it was hated. But then you have movies like Bye Bye Birdie and West Side Story, which I think are terrible movies, and they're like lauded by critics, and critics love them. And Ann-Margret was in Bye Bye Birdie.
Yeah.
I love West Side Story.
I'm sorry.
But I also think
I loved it as a kid, but then as an adult, I was looking back and I was like, this is kind of racist.
But that's not like it's not intended. Like I mean, whatever.
But I also think that for those movies, for the time they were released too, like now
It's different.
we have to remember back in the 90s of like something like this coming out. It was kind of, you know, different. And
Well, the thing was Disney hadn't done a live action musical in a long
years.
time.
Yeah.
So it was like partially that, partially the fact that like I don't know what older people were thinking, like if they were thinking this was going to be some sort of like docudrama or something, but it's geared for
Yeah,
kids.
I don't know. Maybe they
it's a
thought
kid's
like
story.
maybe adults thought like it was gonna be violent or something.
Well, and the thing that Kenny Ortega does best, he directed High School Musical, he directed Hocus Pocus, he directed Descendants. Like, arguably the thing he does best are these movies for like kind of like
Family.
tweens or teenagers or family. And it's so weird to me that like High School Musical was such a hit when I think Newsies is way better than High School Musical. But that's just my
But
humble
that's because of
opinion.
the
yeah.
generation that we're in. Also, a lot
Also
of those
that-
kids related to the kids that were in High School Musical. No one can relate to a Newsies. Like, you know what I mean?
Also, that it
Wait,
was
but
better
what is-
filmed than High School Musical.
But what does that say to me?
And I
That
don't care about all
was
the hate I
like
get on
I was
that.
like relating to the like 1899
No, but
strikers.
remember, there's we know that a lot of us, depending on like the musicals we like and the movies, we always say, oh, I have an old soul. Kids this generation doesn't even know what the hell an old soul is.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know what I mean? They'd rather be like, I want to be like Vanessa Hudgens and fall in love with a Zac Efron. Like that's what
It's
what
like-
they would rather be doing.
They said it on Dance Moms because they did a Prince tribute, and like none of the kids on Dance Moms grew up with Prince, or really like they may have heard his music, but they don't know him and they don't get it. So they wasn't coming across in their dance, and they were like, I mean, these kids didn't grow up with him. They don't know these people. They don't understand it. So even if it is something that we didn't grow up during that time period, I think like, I don't know. We were raised in a generation too, I think, where like movies were not as fast made as they are today.
Yep.
Things stayed in
the
theaters a lot longer. Like people watched older films a lot more. I don't know.
Yeah.
I grew up watching a lot of old films, so it's like I was okay with watching something about a different time period. Whereas kids nowadays, I think, want to see more.
And I
of
also
them.
think that like the High School Musicals and the Descendants of the world that he does, those were like you said, marketed to children because they aired on the Disney Channel.
Yeah,
No parent. You didn't have to
Did
drag
we
your
have a
parent
Disney
to.
Channel when we were kids?
It started with Nickelodeon first, and then Disney started
No, we had
picking
Disney
up.
Channel for.
I lived in Germany, so this is like a legitimate
had all those-
question I have.
No, because like Susie Q and all those old movies were
Yeah.
Disney Channel originals that I watched like growing
But
up.
they didn't have like the
Wish Upon a Star.
manpower that Nickelodeon had back in the 90s
Yeah,
to start with.
Nickelodeon did.
True.
Like
Like they
and
were
then
more
Disney
they were
caught
more
up and
movie
surpassed.
based.
Yeah, they were more
and
like
Nickelodeon
movie
was more
based.
show based.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that, you know, those other movies that Kenny Ortega has done now, I don't have, if I'm 7 years old, I don't have to say, Mom, take me to see this. I just turn on my TV, it's on, and once it premieres on the Disney Channel, they do like marathons of it, and
I
it's
wonder
always
if
in
this
your
film
face,
would
so
have done
marketing.
better if it had been like a Disney Channel original rather than a
I
theatrical.
think so.
I also just think that if it had been released in 2000s instead of 92, it would have done better. I think that the time period that it was released, just maybe we weren't ready for it.
Well, luckily for
Luckily
us, it has
for
become
us.
a cult classic and it's available
it's-
everywhere and hasn't just diminished off into nothing.
I know that the version I own right now is the 20th anniversary version,
Yeah.
which sounds like it's the one you own with the commentary.
yeah. I
It's
think
20.
so.
It's been over 20 years.
Collector's edition, yeah.
Yeah.
But I love how even on the cover of this, it has Robert Duvall and Ann-Margret.
Well, yeah, because they want to showcase the
Yeah.
On the cover of mine, it has Robert Duvall, Ann-Margret, and Christian Bale because
Because the
by
20th
this point,
yeah.
he was famous.
Yeah,
He was
but
famous.
It's like if you had the original Nightmare on Elm Street, it didn't say anything about Johnny Depp really, but now it's like the main thing is like introducing Johnny Depp. It's the
Yeah.
first thing he ever did, but he was a nobody when that came out, so of course they're not going to showcase
Of course they're
it.
not. And
I think, you know, the other thing to me, it's we'll talk about this more when we talk about the musical, but the one thing this lacks is obviously like a good like female character. There were female Newsies, there weren't a lot of them. I kind of wish that the sister, is the only Newsie or person, not Newsie, the only character whose name I can't remember. Because,
Sarah.
Sarah.
Yeah, because she's worthless. She's not interesting. I
Damn,
wish
that's
she.
cold.
Yeah, I wish she would have been a newsie. It was they cast
could have done
her-
more with her character. I
They
agree.
cast her because she had chemistry with Christian Bale. They were thinking of casting
Basically, he wanted to
Mila
make out with
Jovovich because she can sing, and they were going to give her
song.
a song, and then he did not have any chemistry with her, so they cut her out. So there's no real girl song, and they're I don't know about you guys, but watching it, I always wanted to be like Denton or the Newsies. I didn't,
You didn't want to be the girl
I
carrying
didn't
a
want to be
laundry basket
Ann-Margret, and I didn't want to
that finds
be
a 2-day-old hot dog laying in a drawer.
Or
I
when she
saved the
pushes them off of her
day.
when she's carrying the.
with her
Get off of me!
boobs. I was
Get
like,
off of me!
Stop! You're terrible
The
at fighting.
almost rape scene in a way.
Yeah. It's kind of.
I shouldn't have air quoted
Sketch
rape. It would kind of seemed like
It's
it was
kinda
going
like
in
a-
that direction.
It's like, where are we going with this, guys? It's Disney. Let's remember.
All right, guys, we're out of time, unfortunately. But
but
next
I
week
could
we
talk
will
about this all
all be
day.
back. We're going to be talking about the musical this time, the Broadway musical that they adapted from this movie, and we can discuss the differences and everything about that one too. So
Sounds like
thank you,
fun.
guys. Have fun and see you today.
Producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Underdog, Phil Sweeter, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network. We'd like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network. The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.